Hustle culture, the art of turning language learning into a startup unicorn. What do I mean by that? 大家好，欢迎来我的频道. My name is Bianca, and I have what one could call an addictive personality. Now, for some clarification, that doesn't necessarily mean to certain illicit substances, but rather a tendency to become extremely passionate about something, to develop a fixation or low-key obsession about something. In layman's terms, when I find something that I like, I go all in, a 0 to 100 kind of person. Now, what one does with this fairly intense type of personality, although like most things, it exists on a spectrum. It determines whether you do things that you find productive or less than helpful or even approaching more maladaptive behaviors. But why am I talking about this? I'm not a psychology channel, although I do love studying about the brain and all things related to the brain, mostly when the brain stops working. But have you noticed a general culture shift over time towards a 0 to 100 type of mentality? Hustle culture. You work 5 part-time jobs so you can retire in 10 years and achieve the FIRE status. Mental health and physical health be damned. Stack your schedule with any and all activities to make your CV or resume the most competitive, applicable to me during this insane neuroscience PhD application cycle. We have to fill every second of our days with something productive or else we're falling behind. What does falling behind get you? Nothing. You become below average instead of spectacular. Our society is so focused on being the best and getting there the quickest that we sacrifice a lot to achieve those goals. Now, this is a language learning channel, so let me bring it back to that. If you've seen my videos before, you'll probably already know what I'll discuss next. So what has my somewhat addictive personality manifested in the realm of language learning? Well, for starters, I wake up at 4 a.m. to study 4 to 5 hours before work starts. Not the typical morning schedule, I'm sure. Then I listen to podcasts or TV shows throughout my day whenever I can get in those precious immersion hours. I try to jam-pack my day with as much language learning material so that I can get fluent ASAP. Learn Chinese in 30 days. Yeah, that's not really possible. And I've done this to varying degrees for the last 2-ish years. I haven't gone as intense as Matt versus Japan and forsaking all social life, professional life, or whatnot for the sake of my Chinese learning. But it's definitely more intense than what most would want for their own studies. Okay, Bianca, we get it that you study a lot. You've said this before. Get to the point, please. Rest. Does our culture even know what rest is anymore? Do we know how to take breaks? How to enjoy doing nothing? Do we allow ourselves to not be productive? But we are all language learners here. We want to learn our target language, and in order to do that, we need to go ham and really study very hard every day. But at what cost? Sacrificing time with your friends where you can get an emotional recharge of energy? Sacrificing sleep to fit in everything you absolutely need to get done. Pushing through until you hate learning because you just have to get over that intermediate plateau. When did language learning become a startup that we're trying to turn into a $47 billion unicorn company only to find out that it was actually wework? Yikes. But languages can't be learned in a day, in a week, or a month, or any other time frame you want to set as your benchmark for success. We still learn new words, word constructions, nuances, idioms, etc. in our native language. Language learning is a lifelong process, and what is included in that process? Rest. Ask yourself this question. Do you get stressed out about not learning as much as you should? But who is defining that should? Are you comparing your progress to others? I should be learning 20 new words a day because X, Y, and Z YouTuber told me to. I should be learning Japanese in 18 months because Cats told me I could. I just have to be intense enough. And I'm intense, right? I can do it. I just need to hustle. Hustle, and then I'll be there. Hustle, and then I'll be successful. Maybe you can, but should you? And here's where rest comes in. On my channel, I show how I study really, really hard and the progress I get after studying really, really hard. I mean, I'm trying to go through HSK5 in 2 months, which is definitely an interesting process. More about that in a few weeks. But one thing that I have failed to show is my rest periods. Maybe it's because it's not a really flashy video topic, and I do want the coveted algorithm to carry me to instant stardom. Okay, not fame and fortune, because I'm a realist, but it would be nice to have a steady stream of new viewers watching my content, you know? Maybe I don't show or talk about rest because it feels unproductive and the opposite of what a YouTube polyglot is. Although I'm definitely not a YouTube polyglot. I don't know if I even really want to be one. But regardless, I don't really show that side of my learning, reasons aside. But it's super important. And I know it's cliche, but language learning is more of a marathon, not a sprint. Sprinters are able to push and push and push because the finish line is really close. They can actually see the end when they start. But marathon runners, they train differently. They run for miles and miles and miles and miles. They start off with a runner's high. They are incredibly motivated to keep going, keep pushing. But that passion and success can slowly transition into fatigue, disillusion until you hit rock bottom. You can't see the end. But what's the difference between a marathon runner than the sprinter? They've learned how to pace. They don't use up all of their energy reserves in the beginning. Rather, they go slower than they theoretically could because they know that the journey ahead requires consistency. Rock bottom is not the end for our beloved marathon runner. No, because he's paced himself, learned when to push and when to slow down. Then as you get closer and closer and closer to that finish line, with those extra energy reserves, you can push once again and finish the race. We should train like a marathon runner, not a sprinter. Yeah, being a language sprinter is flashy, but can you really keep up training if you get the shin splints? As you go through your language learning journey, monitor your pace like a marathon runner. Adjust it to the circumstances that your body is facing. Are you going through a more challenging or more demanding time in your life? That's rock bottom for a marathon runner. So slow down, refocus, take walking breaks, rest where needed. You have more time or a sudden increase in motivation and passion because you can see all the progress you've made compounding together. Push more, challenge yourself. Tune your language learning to these ever-changing things so that you can keep learning in the long run. But how does one do this? Let's have a short story time. Over the last six-ish months, I've been in the process of applying for neuroscience PhD programs, and I can't believe it's already been 6 months. It's felt like an eternity. But during that time, I've had to spend many hours researching programs, writing personal statements, editing those personal statements another 4 or 5 times, communicating with letter recommendation writers, building up my CV, updating my CV, filling out application forms, which take much longer than one would expect, all before even hitting that submit button and sending hundreds or sometimes thousands of dollars in application fees to schools that you could very easily get ghosted from because there's too many qualified applicants this cycle. But I'm sure you'll attend another amazing institution and change the world. Wait some time, and then the process of preparing for interviews, attending interviews, slowly depleting your energy reserves and increasing your physical and mental fatigue. Your mental acuity definitely wanes after 4 back-to-back interviews with professors and 3 informational sessions, all in the span of a few hours. All of that sounds pretty tiring, doesn't it? It was. I'm still tired. So this was my environmental condition over the last 6 months. As a runner in the language acquisition marathon, the Boston Marathon's close cousin, how should I be pacing myself? Assessing the condition of my current level of fatigue and adjusting my language learning accordingly. Did I do that? Not really. I started a 2-month HSK5 challenge instead. You would think that I would take my own advice sometimes, but apparently not. I just kept pushing and learned a new chapter a day until I hit chapter 30. That's not 30, but I'm pretty proud of that, to be honest. But hustling was catching up to me. I grew too tired, so I was forced to take a bit of a break. But instead of slowing down my jog, I had to stop, catch my breath and walk until that searing pain in the side of my stomach that happens when I run just a little bit too much went away. And who am I kidding? It happens every time that I start running because my endurance is crap. I ended up progressing slower because I pushed myself too hard when my environment was telling me I should take it just a little bit more easily. Don't be like me. Learn to rest. Learn to identify the stage of learning you're in, the stage of life you're in, and adjust your study plan, expectations accordingly. It's okay if you're not the first at the finish line. All that matters is that you do your best to finish as many miles as you want to. It's not that serious. Don't let hustle culture turn language learning into a job that you will eventually hate. Treat it like the long-term journey that it is and enjoy every minute of it. Journeys can be windy, they can have hills and bumps and straight paths, just like the Boston Marathon track. Each with their own challenges, but also opportunities for growth. My own journey was pretty windy, so tune in next week to see just how haphazardly I learned Chinese throughout these last few years. But those are my rants about hustle culture and resting. And if you agree with these or disagree with these thoughts, write it down in the comments below. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out. And if you're interested, consider supporting me on Patreon for some cool stuff on there. Consider supporting Standard Mandarin Weekly, which is a really great resource to find very comprehensible input. Links will be in the description below, but I will see you guys next week. I hope you have a good rest of your days. 再见。